And I'm not even going to talk to you about climate change, because you already know about that. Except to make one point, which is, don't forget the oceans. And I mean that not just because the oceans are probably the vector for the first really bad knockdown punch that climate change delivers to the Earth, but because the oceans don't lie. And they make our argument better than anything. If you will notice, the deniers want to take you off into the abstruse realm of computer climate projections, where there is room to sow doubt and do their mischief. Go to a tide gauge. It's basically a yardstick on a pier. It's measured in inches. You can't fool around with that. Go to Narragansett Bay, nearly 4 degrees warmer mean water temperature. You measure that with a thermometer. You can't mess around with that. Go anywhere where acidification is beginning to manifest itself. And the technology for determining the acidity is no different than what kids use to make sure that their aquarium is right. You measure it. So unless the deniers want to be the party that is against measurement, and not just against science, we have a good argument in the oceans, and don't forget it. We are going to win this thing. We're going to win it sooner than everybody thinks. And you can feel and see the pieces coming together. Just a couple of years ago, you couldn't get the White House to say climate change. Now, they've got the best climate regulation ever put forward by this country. And that is not only good in terms of reducing emissions, it's good on the psychology of the big polluters. And they're big. The biggest 50 power plants emit more carbon dioxide than Korea.
Oh my God.
And for those of you who are Hyundai owners, it's a pretty big industrial country. So if you're the owner of those top big 50 polluting power plants, then suddenly the fact that there's a rule that your long free holiday is over, that changes things. It changes the way you think. Because now you're choosing among alternatives: regulation, carbon fee, carbon tax, cap and trade. You are no longer getting a free pass. And in that choice, I think we can work towards a good carbon fee. For God's sake, you've got probably 3 Republican secretaries of the Treasury supporting it, 2 for sure, and I think we can bring that 3rd. So that is one reason for optimism. Another reason for optimism is that we are recovering now from Citizens United.
Oh.
Think about it. We have had probably 10 Republican senators who have done good things on climate in the past. Campaigned for president on a climate platform, sponsored significant bipartisan climate legislation, voted in the House for Waxman-Markey, spoken out in favor of carbon fees. There is a lot of action that used to exist on that side. It stopped in January of 2010. What happened in January of 2010? The Supreme Court decided Citizens United, the big polluters, the Koch brothers, the big dirty money, the big propaganda operation that they run was ready, and they went to work right away. And the Democrats said, you know, that's wrong, we don't want to do that. Ew. gave them an enormous advantage, an enormous advantage. There are some very brave and good Republicans in the Senate who want to get this done as soon as they see daylight. Smart, they will realize that the current position of the Republican Party on climate change will be a stain of infamy on that party's brand for a generation if they don't clean it up. So when LCD and NRDC Action Fund and Tom Steyer and Citizens Climate Lobby and folks get into this political conversation in a big way, that is going to cause our colleagues to have a bit of a rethink. And I challenge you to have the 2014 elections be a wake-up call for our denier friends. It's not just about the attitude of the polluters, although that's having a real phase shift. And it's not just about who's got how much big money on their side, although that's having a phase shift too. It's also really fundamentally about where the American public is. Over the weekend, I was cleaning a big casserole. And I set it down to soak. And it was maybe an inch full of water, about a 2-inch thick casserole, and maybe 20 inches across. It was pretty big. We've done roasted vegetables in it. They stuck to the bottom of the casserole. When you carry something like that, a little tip makes a big slosh. Right? And we're at a point where there a little more tip is going to make a very big slosh. Look at some of the measurements. Despite all of the poisonous propaganda that the polluting interests have emitted since the president's proposed rule came out, recent polling shows that 2/3 of Americans are totally on board. 70% say we want to act on it. Most Americans say we got to act on this even if it means my bill goes up a little bit. That's how much I care about this. You get polling out of places like Texas and Louisiana that is strong. I spoke to a weatherman, a broadcast meteorologist, I think is a better name for them, from South Carolina. Some of you may have heard of him. He's the guy who broadcasts about climate change all the time in South Carolina. And he said when they started doing it, the TV station went into DEFCON 4. And they had people on the phones, and they backed down the hatches, and they waited for the huge explosion, the huge blowback. Never came. Never came in South Carolina. So he told me his station did a survey in its broadcast area to see how people felt. And he said the numbers came back just the same as the numbers you see anywhere else in the country.
2/3.
And every once in a while I had a client who calls me up, and I just talk them through the facts, and they end up giving up because they don't know what they're talking about. But he said he also gets complimented. The most popular show he's ever done was on what climate change means for poison ivy. When you get to that level of kind of prosaic stuff, on on the nightly news from your local trusted weatherman. That's a good sign. But here's my favorite, even better than the weatherman. The poll that was taken of young Republican voters. Yes. Self-identified young Republican voters under the age of 35, by a clear majority, 53%, said that climate denial was ignorant, out of touch, or crazy. You tell me how long a political party can hold its own when the American people disagree with it by better than 2-1, when its own young cohort think that its position is ignorant, out of touch, or crazy, when it's associated with some of the worst and most mischievous people in the world, and that's going to stick for a while, by the way. And when, just by the way, they are also flat, dead, factually wrong, that's a castle that is built on sand. And the sand is eroding, and the castle will fall, and with all of you, and with people all across this country who care about this issue, and who understand what it means for our lives, who understand what it means for our future, for our children, for our grandchildren, and who understand what it means for our standing in the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to close with one last story. I grew up in the Foreign Service. My dad was a Foreign Service officer. We went where we got posted. And despite what you might think about champagne and hors d'oeuvres and the diplomatic corps, it was none of that. We didn't go anyplace very nice. But there was a common theme wherever we were in these war-torn, deeply impoverished countries. America, they knew, was different. America, they knew, was different. We've been an example ever since shining city on a hill, right? Massachusetts, 17th century. Joe Reagan using the same phrase when he was president. Bill Clinton has always said that the example of our power in this country has always meant less than the power of our example. We are an exemplary nation. I believe we are the essential nation. I believe we are the indispensable nation. I believe we are an exceptional nation. And for our whole lives, we have coasted on a tide of goodwill about America. It doesn't matter what barrio you live in, what village you live in, what little hovel by the side of a dirty coast someplace you fish in, however poor and broken your situation is. If you have access to the news, you know that in America is out there and things don't have to be the way they are for you. And that's always been good for us, what they call soft power. We risk blowing that. If across the world those same people are seeing that the fish they used to catch are gone, the manioc they used to harvest won't grow in the new drought, the village where they used to be is now underwater, storms that never reached their hillside are now sweeping across the hillside, and they take that and they find out that we had it within our power to do something about it, and we failed to do it. We failed to do it because our political system failed, because there was too much greed in it, because there was too much money in it, because there was too much fear in it. That then becomes the power of our example. And that's not an example that we want to set. Too much is riding on America being a success in this world for us to allow that to happen. We cannot allow that to happen. We will not allow that to happen. We will redeem this. We will make this right. And we will win this issue way sooner than people think.